We all prefer things a certain way, like groceries. If you want groceries just how you like them, you gotta try Instacart. They have a new preference picker that lets you pick how ripe or unripe you want your bananas. Shoppers can see your preferences upfront, helping guide their choices. Because when it comes to groceries, the details matter. Instacart. Get groceries just how you like.
There's a town in Missouri. It's quiet, it's ordinary. It's the kind of place where the loudest thing on a summer night is the sound of cicadas chirping. But nestled in this calm is a house. A house that doesn't just creak or groan like any old house. No, this house screams. Not metaphorically, not emotionally. Human screams coming from nowhere and everywhere all at once. The man who moved in thought he was buying a fresh start, but what he got was something else entirely. Welcome back to Paranormal Directive 13, where every week we come one step closer to being the victims in the next week's episode. I'm your host, Matt, and this week I got a story that's really going to mess with your head. This isn't some urban legend from Reddit. This actually happened to a man back in 2001, and it's actually very similar to an episode we did a couple weeks ago on the South Shields poltergeist, because poltergeist hauntings are much more fun than just, I saw a shadow, I heard a noise. These ones take things up a notch, and they're always a lot more fun. So picture this. You're a single dad, you just went through a divorce, and you're trying to give your 3 kids a fresh start kind of away from all the drama. You find this gorgeous white house in Union, Missouri, about 50 miles from St. Louis. It's a quiet town, decent rent, perfect for raising kids, right? Now, if only he knew what was waiting for them at that house. This is the story of the Union Screaming House. So it's 2001, and Stephen LaChance just went through a divorce, and he's got his 3 kids, Lydia, Kyle, and Charlie. And he's trying to find a new place. He's getting kicked out of his old place, and he needs to find them a new place to live. So he's searching all the classified ads and all the for rent ads and trying to just find anywhere, really, for him and his family to go live. And he finds this house. It's this gorgeous old white house in the middle of Union, Missouri, and it is absolutely perfect. It is the perfect size. It is the perfect area. It is everything that they want in a house. Steven's thinking, this is going to be way too expensive, but let's go check it out anyways. It was definitely something, the size of it and all that they were looking for. Generally, houses that size are out of his price range, but the kids loved it and they wanted to go look. So they go to the open house and they're looking around, and this house is still perfect. It's got everything they want. The kids are loving the way it's decorated and all that. And come to find out, the rent is super affordable. It's something that Stephen can afford. So they put in their application and they're waiting to hear back, and it takes about a week or so. And then it gets kind of weird right off the bat at this point. The landlady, she's this older, creepy lady, and she calls them to let them know that they've been selected to live there. It's just kind of a weird way to say, you're approved or whatever. It's, you've been selected to live here. And then she insists that they meet at this restaurant to do all the paperwork and hand over the money and all that, not at an office or at the house, anything like that, but just at this weird restaurant that she wanted to meet him at to do all the stuff. So he's like, that's kind of strange, but okay, cool. Let's go do it. Let's get everything done, taken care of. And Steven's just kind of desperate to get in this house. So he's just like, yeah, whatever. She just doesn't want to meet at the house. Whatever. Maybe she doesn't have an office. Fine. Whatever. We'll do it. So they start moving in Memorial Day weekend, 2001. And Steven's unloading the last of his stuff from the moving truck when this car slowly cruises by. It rolls the window down and some guy just says, "Hope you get along okay here," and then speeds off. And his daughter Lydia, she's looking at him. She's like, "Dad, what was that about?" And he's just trying to play it off. He's like, "Oh, maybe just friendly neighbors, I guess." But inside, he's already got this creepy feeling that, something's not right. But the house does look perfect. It's a peaceful neighborhood. It's spacious. It's got lots of character, which is funny because in my experience of looking for houses, when someone lists a house with lots of character, that's code for it's an old piece of shit, but they doctor it up to make it sound good and look good in pictures. But that's not really the case with this house. This house is actually a really nice, well put together home. The kids are excited about their new rooms, and Steven's thinking, maybe this is exactly what they needed after everything that they'd just gone through with the divorce and moving and all that, that this is what they needed, was this house. So pretty early on is when they start to notice the first things happening. Just like most stories, just like with cell shields, it's small little things at first. Steven's trying to make the place kind of feel like home, and his daughter thinks it would be nice for him to hang this big picture of two angels in the living room. There was already like little cherubs lining the walls and everything, so it just kind of seemed like a perfect spot to put it. So Steven hangs the picture and turns around to grab something, and he just hears this crash behind him. He looks, and the picture's on the floor, glass is broken. He's just thinking, maybe I didn't hang it right, maybe the nail got loose, whatever, so he hangs it again. Turns around again, crash. This picture's on the floor again. The third time, he's being extra careful with it. He's making sure the nail's secure. He's making sure it's in there good. He's like holding it up on there, just kind of bouncing it around, making sure that it's not going to fall anywhere. And he turns and starts to walk away, and he feels this like rush of air behind him, and then something hits him in the back of the ankles. And when he turns around, there is the picture on the floor for a third time. So now Steven's getting both mixture of frustrated and confused. And so as he hangs it one last time, he just yells out to this empty room, stay there, damn it. He's just kind of laughing to himself, like who yells at a picture? But the weird thing is he was alone in the house. The kids were outside playing. There was no one else in there. And he felt this rush behind him, like something was there. But there was no one else in the house with him. It's almost like, in maybe a little bit of foreshadowing, that something didn't want him to hang this picture of two angels in the house. And over the next couple days, things start to progress a little bit. Doors start opening and closing by themselves. The kids get really scared of being alone in the house, so they just won't go anywhere by themselves. He's even having to escort them to the bathroom at this point. And then he notices these like super bright as hell lights shining in through the windows at night. The whole family would just run outside to see where they're coming from. But there's nothing. No cars, no flashlights, no explanation for these lights just shining through the windows in the middle of the night. And then things take another step forward. And this is when the basement incident happens with one of Steven's sons. So they were about to leave, and Kyle runs down into the basement to try and grab something real quick, and just starts screaming bloody murder, runs up the stairs terrified. And Steven runs in. He's like, what's wrong? What's going on? And the boy looks at him and says, something was down there. Something didn't want him down there. And he is so terrified. He actually wets his pants in the middle of the kitchen after running up these stairs because he was just that scared of what just happened to him in the basement. It's kind of like that joke, where you're downstairs and you go to turn off the lights and you have to run upstairs as fast as you can before the demons get you. That running joke and meme that you see. But this is like what actually happened to Steven's kid. He got so terrified because of something that actually was down there that he felt the need to bolt up the stairs and was so scared he couldn't even control his bladder at this point. And Steven starts to feel it in the house too. He starts feeling these cold electrical sensations kind of running throughout his body when he's in the living room. Temperatures would drop for no reason. There's horrible smells that are so bad that they couldn't even describe them, that would just kind of come out of nowhere. And the kids are starting to change. Lydia, the oldest daughter, she becomes this kind of withdrawn, jumpy kid who used to be very outgoing and social. And Kyle, the middle kid, he starts getting defiant, like wanting to fight back against whatever's messing with them. And the youngest son, Charlie, he starts drawing these just horrible, terrible pictures. Kind of exactly what you think about when you think of a kid who's possessed or saw something and they draw these, demonic pictures of scribbles everywhere and like ghost faces and all that. That's what Charlie is actually doing at this point. One of the following nights, Lydia wakes up screaming in her bed. Steven jumps out of his room, runs over there, and she's telling him that something grabbed her ankle. Not brushed against it, not bumped it or whatever, but literally she felt this like icy hand grip around her ankle and try to pull her off the bed. This isn't just a regular ghost story anymore. We are transforming into real poltergeist, physical activity, physical contact with whatever's in the house. And now here's where it gets a little more disturbing, more so disturbing than an icy hand trying to yank you off your bed, but even more so than that, is Kyle starts seeing this thing in the house. And he describes it as a clown, but not like any clown you'd want to see. You know, it had wild red hair, this completely white face. But what gives you nightmares with this image is that it had no eyes, just empty sockets where the eyes would be, and a mouth filled with razor sharp teeth. A real stereotypical kind of demonic clown image that you can think of. Like, kind of like Pennywise, but even scarier of a clown. Like, less facial features, just more like void and emptiness, but still that same like gaping smile full of sharp teeth and just this terrifying presence. And he starts seeing this clown multiple times. He starts seeing it over and over throughout the house. And whatever this is, it's not just appearing and disappearing like a regular ghost. It's moving furniture around. It's flipping stuff over in the kids' rooms. It's slamming doors so hard that the entire house is shaking. And then the family can also hear this screaming, but not the kids screaming. It's like the house itself, like the walls of the house were screaming. Stephen is starting to hear breathing right next to him while no one's there. There's footsteps above his head. There's whispers coming from inside the walls of the house. This isn't some just basic haunting where you see the same thing over and over and over. This thing seems to be intelligent and watching them, kind of learning what scares them, and then using that to try and scare them even more and then escalate that day by day.
Hi, I'm Melissa Banashai, CEO and co-founder of Baked by Melissa. As a mom, I find deciding what to make for dinner the hardest decision of my day. That's why I'm partnering with Blue Apron to bring you delicious and nutritious dinners that are quick and easy like your mom. Just kidding. Your mom's amazing. Get 35% off your first order at Blue Apron with promo code Melissa. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more. Okay, love you. Bye.
With VerboCare, help is always ready. Before, during, and after your stay. We've planned for the plot twists, so support is always available. Because a great trip starts with peace of mind.
And now a couple nights after that, Stephen is lying in bed while something pins him down to the bed. And it wasn't like sleep paralysis. He was fully awake and aware of what was going on, but there was this invisible weight on his chest so heavy he could barely breathe. He was physically struggling against it, trying to move. But whatever it was holding him down, kind of showing Stephen how powerless he was against whatever was in there. And again, it wasn't a sleep paralysis type event. He was awake and conscious and physically pushing back, like struggling. You know, usually in a sleep paralysis type of thing, you just can't move. You physically can't move or fight back and you just feel stuck. He was physically trying and moving, kind of like, you know, if you had a weight, you were working out and your weight was too heavy and you're trying to push it off and you're like struggling and shaking and trying to get it off you. That's what he was doing to whatever was pushing him down on the bed. And now by this point, Stephen is calling in paranormal investigators to take a look at all this. They come in with every piece of equipment you could think of, and they're getting all sorts of activity in this house. They're getting dozens of EVPs, taking pictures with weird energy patterns all over the house. And some of the investigators are actually getting physically attacked. They've been bitten, they've been scratched. There was stuff like appearing on their bodies with no explanation. But nothing they try to get rid of it works. If anything, it's just making it get worse and worse. 13 days. That is all the LaChance family lasted in this house. It was 13 days. The final night started normal enough. Stephen was on the phone with his mom when he heard Lydia start screaming from upstairs. Not just scared, but just absolutely terrified. The temperature in the house dropped about 30 degrees in a matter of seconds, and Stephen could feel that electrical charge he had mentioned before just running through his body. But this time, that charge and the temperature drop is also accompanied by one of those horrendous smells all at the same time. And then the screaming starts again, and this wasn't just Lydia's scream, this was the house screaming. A man's voice screaming, a child's voice screaming, all mixed together in this like horrible chorus of screams, just filling and echoing throughout the entire house. And then they hear this loud just boom, 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 It's just something coming down the stairs. Each step it's taking is shaking the entire house. And Stephen is trying desperately to get to Lydia's room, but he can just feel something behind him, something that he knows he doesn't want to turn around and see. But Lydia's bedroom door won't open. He's throwing himself against the door over and over while those footsteps and booming are getting closer behind him. He's slamming his shoulder into the door with just boom, boom coming up behind him. Finally, the door just kind of slams open and he finds Lydia standing there in this complete sense of shock, like almost like a catatonic state. She was just standing there. Stephen yells back at Kyle. He says, "Grab your brother, run to the car." And he's trying to get Lydia back to reality. He actually has to end up slapping her to get her to snap out of this daze and come back to reality. And then he picks her up and he starts carrying her towards the door. And behind them, he can hear another bedroom door slam open, like it's following them through the house. They burst out of the front door of the house and run to the car. And Stephen drives to the top of the street where they can still see the house. And what they see next, it even kind of gives me chills just telling you the story right here. Through the windows of the house, they can see a dark figure just moving room to room, like it was searching and looking for them. It wasn't trying to just scare them away. It wanted them back in that house to do whatever it was planning to do with them. And Stephen, he was on the phone with his mother the whole time, and he just tells her, "We're coming to your house. We are not going back to this house ever again." And then he calls the landlady the next day to tell her they were moving out. And she just says to him pretty plainly, "Some people are meant to live in an old house like that, and some people aren't. I never thought you were the old house type." Which begs the question, she never thought he was the old house type? Then why the hell did you select him to live there? If you didn't think he was the type for that kind of house, then why would you select him to go into that house? It almost feels like she knew exactly what was going to happen to them, and that's why she wanted them in that house. But now you would think that's the end of the story, right? They escape, they move out, everybody's safe. Like, that's it. That's the end, right? But no. Another family moves into that house. And the main target this time is a woman named Helen. And whatever's in that house kind of learned from its experience with the LaChance family, and now it's more focused and more determined than ever. Helen's story starts out with a lot of the same stuff, breathing, footsteps, whispers, but then objects start flying around the house constantly. Light bulbs start exploding. The gutters of the house catch on fire for no reason. Imagine that. You're standing in the house or you're coming home and you're looking outside and your gutters are on fire. What's supposed to be catching rainwater and usually is a little bit moist. I have worked in roofing and gutters and stuff before. There's usually a little bit of moisture in there. For them to catch on fire randomly for no reason is kind of crazy. Yeah, it could happen. Yeah, if it's dry and something gets in there and whatever's in there catches on fire, there's always a lot of pine needles and things like that. But it's very rare, and it happened to this same woman more than once in this house. And aside from the gutters catching on fire, the electrical transformer in front of the house exploded every couple months. Like, I've seen transformers explode from time to time. It happens. But usually it's not the same one over and over every couple months. They replace this transformer. They do inspections. They make sure the electrical grid is fine. They make sure there's nothing overloading it. They try to track down what caused this to explode. And this thing just continuously explodes even after passing every inspection and every replacement and everything they're doing. It just keeps exploding every couple months. But really the worst part for Helen is what this thing is doing to her mentally. She starts having homicidal thoughts about her own family. She's using language she's never used before. The thing isn't just trying to scare her, it's trying to possess Helen at this point. It's gone past scares and attacks and all that, and trying to move into possession of a person now. And Stephen and Helen talked about this. Stephen told her what he experienced, and she was telling him what she was experiencing. And it gets so bad that one night, Helen shows up at Stephen's front door with a gun, just screaming obscenities, completely taken over by whatever got into her head from that house. The police get called for a suicide call that Helen swears to this day she never made. Eventually, Helen ended up getting institutionalized from this. This thing achieved what it was after, which was just complete psychological domination of these people. It was so bad that it got Helen put into an institution because she was going so crazy over what this thing was doing to her. Now, that's the end of Stephen and Helen's story. But we got to get into the background of the house a little bit. What makes this house kind of disturbing and prime for what was going on there was that the house was built in 1932 on land that has a seriously dark history. The house itself sits right on the site of an old slaves' quarters from the Civil War era, and the land was owned by Captain T. Crow. And there are stories about his wife Minerva having inappropriate relations with her slaves, leading to murders, cover-ups, and all sorts of things there. But it gets worse. The area around the house is believed to have mass graves from a Civil War hospital that later became the county poorhouse. And nobody knows exactly where all these bodies are buried, but they are somewhere in the neighborhood there. And even in modern times, not Civil War area, but we're talking back just in 1974, right across the street from the house, a woman killed her husband with an axe and then shot herself. And the locals say that suicides by gun are unusually common in Union, especially among women. Stephen and the investigators who were looking into all this kind of believe that all this history has sort of poisoned the land in that area, and the house is just kind of a focal point for centuries of just accumulated trauma and suffering. People who go there to visit the property often feel physically ill just from being near the house, let alone being inside of it. And locals in the area, they won't even walk in front of the house. They will cross the street to walk on the other side of the road instead of walking down the sidewalk that goes right in front of the house. And now here's the part where people say, well, let's do an exorcism. Do an exorcism on the house. Whatever's in there, get it out of there. Well, the thing is, they tried and it didn't work. The Catholic Church, the actual Catholic Church, issued a 156-page report specifically about this house. 156 pages. And they concluded that the house was manifested with a strong demonic presence and classified the phenomena as demonic infestation, oppression, obsession, and possession. That's not just some local priest giving his opinion. This is an official church document categorizing this as a full-scale demonic situation at this house. And even with priests coming in to bless the house and perform exorcisms and all of that, nothing worked. If anything, it just made whatever was going on in the house just worse. It's almost like whatever was in the house was just kind of showing off like how powerless human and religious intervention was against it.
We all prefer things a certain way, like groceries. If you want groceries just how you like them, you gotta try Instacart. They have a new preference picker that lets you pick how ripe or unripe you want your bananas. Shoppers can see your preferences up front, helping guide their choices. Because when it comes to groceries, the details matter. Instacart. Get groceries just how you like.
And today, the town of Union itself is kind of split down the middle about the story. You have people who swear that Stephen LaChance is telling the truth, former residents who say they experienced similar things, people who see shadow figures at the house, people finding unexplained handprints on their cars just from looking at the house. But then naturally, you do have the skeptics, people who say they lived there in the late 80s and early 90s and say nothing ever happened to them. Neighbors who've been there for years claiming they've never seen anything unusual go on at that house. And then some people think it's not demons at all, but it's Native American spirits. One resident is quoted as saying it's a little Indian girl and a gentleman that's an Indian male, which were the original inhabitants of the land. Now, who knows which side is true? But with the whole documentation from the church and Stephen's testimony, and then the story of Helen being institutionalized, it ventures to say that there's more than likely something going on there rather than nothing and people just blowing everything out of proportion. It definitely feels like there is some sort of teeth to this story. Whether some of the accounts are embellished a little bit for sake of story or whatever from those retelling it, there is something going on at this house. which now actually sits mostly empty. There's no trespassing signs all around it. Reputation alone kind of keeps most people away. And then for those who are curious, there is legal ramifications of trespassing if they were to go and try and see what's going on there for themselves. So it really just kind of sits empty all the time. But the experience itself really completely changed Stephen's life. He went from being a corporate trainer to becoming a major figure in the paranormal community. He wrote a book about this whole haunting called The Uninvited, which the St. Louis Post-Dispatch actually selected as one of the best books of 2008. He's been on Discovery Channel's A Haunting. He's been on Fox News, NBC, CBS, CNN, Travel Channel. I mean, you name it, he's been on it. He also co-hosts a radio show called Haunted Survivor and founded the Missouri Paranormal Research Society. So he's done a lot for trying to raise awareness for paranormal stuff in Missouri and specifically around the St. Louis area. But for him, it really was never about fame. He spent years trying to help Helen, and what he would say was he was helping her fight for her soul. He feels like surviving that house gave him some sort of responsibility to help others that are going through a similar situation to what he experienced. So, what is the truth of the Union Screaming House? I mean, look, I'm not going to tell you what to believe. Maybe Stephen experienced something genuinely paranormal. Maybe it was psychological trauma that was manifesting itself as paranormal experiences. Maybe it was a combination of historical tragedy, mental illness, and power of suggestion, all creating this new modern legend. I don't know, but here's what I do know, is that Stephen and Helen and others that have claimed to live through this were genuinely terrified by something. The trauma was real, even if we all can't really agree on what actually caused the trauma. The land does have this undeniable history of violence and suffering. Whether that creates actual supernatural phenomena or just psychological conditions that feel supernatural, I don't know. That's something that kind of goes to the root of all hauntings and possessions and poltergeists and all of this stuff is it real or not? And how can we get proof that it's real? All we can go on is the stories and feelings that people had about these situations and really just kind of seeing the real terror and fear that they had in these situations. And, it's similar to last week's Dover Demon episode where Abby may have been influenced on what she saw from what Will told her, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't truly believe what she saw. Maybe there's not a demon possessing this house, and maybe some of these things aren't actually how they were described, but that doesn't mean that Stephen did not experience something that truly terrified him in that house. And that's really the bottom line question. The Catholic Church thought it was serious enough to write a 156-page report about it. I mean, that's not nothing. And somewhere in Union, Missouri, that house still stands, mostly empty, waiting for someone else to move in. And the real question is, would you spend 13 days there? Because that's all it took Stephen and his family to have to leave forever. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do me a favor and go on whatever podcast app you use and give a rating or a like or a review or whatever option they have on there. And then also click the button that says share and share it to your friends, your family, your coworkers. Share it to Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and everything that you use and just spread the word on the show. It would mean the world to me to have you guys share this show with everybody and have more and more people listen to it. I'm based in the Northeastern United States, but I check the analytics every day and there's people listening in Germany and Iceland and Ireland and the UK and France and all over the United States. And that is just absolutely amazing to me. Just the idea of me starting this podcast, talking about stuff that I find interesting and having so many of you guys listen to it is just the most amazing thing ever. So thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart. I truly mean it. And also check out the Patreon, patreon.com/paranormaldirective13, where for just $5 a month, you can be a directive founder You get a special little badge on there. Get access to all the Thursday minisodes, the Monday show, and all the extra pictures and things that I put on there. And of course, outside of Patreon, check out the social media, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, all at Paranormal Directive 13. I post daily stuff on there, just little tidbits, clips of the show, new things, just little stuff on there. So follow those, help grow the community from another angle outside of the podcast. And then any stories that you want me to cover, email them over, paranormaldirective13@gmail.com. I will absolutely take a look at any story that you have. I will absolutely do a story of some kind on whatever you want me to talk about, whether that is a full-length podcast, whether that is a Thursday minisode, or whether that is a social media post. I can 100% guarantee you I will do something with whatever you guys suggest for me to take a look at. And just remember, if you're ever in Union, Missouri, and you see an abandoned White House, maybe cross the street before you walk down the sidewalk in front of it.
Discover a legacy of excellence in the heart of Washington, D.C. At the Catholic University of America, where more than 130 years of graduate education meet innovation and purpose. Choose from over 100 graduate programs, including business, engineering, nursing, and public policy, all led by world-class faculty. Gain the skills, connections, and confidence to lead in your field. It's time to elevate your future. Learn more at catholic.edu/graduate.